Some saw wood. I saw a soul. She saw only what it couldn't buy. Then, her quiet judgment shattered everything. The scent of sawdust has always been my truest north, a compass pointing me towards purpose. For as long as I could remember, wood wasn't just material. It was a conversation, a whisper of stories waiting to be coaxed out. My workshop in Portland, tucked away behind a modest home, was my sanctuary. I was Jason, a master woodworker, and I believed in the soul of the grain, the slow, deliberate dance of hand tools, the quiet satisfaction of creating something exquisite that would outlive me. Custom furniture, unique pieces, each one a testament to patience and a refusal to rush art. That was my religion. When Monica came into my life, she was a whirlwind, bright and ambitious, with eyes that sparkled like the city lights she craved. She'd say things like, "Your hands, Jason, they could build anything," and I'd believe she saw the depth of my craft, not just the potential for a bigger house. We built a life, or at least, I thought we did. I loved her fiercely, seeing her vivacity as a counterpoint to my quiet intensity. For a while, she seemed to appreciate the beauty I brought into our home, the sturdy, elegant pieces that filled our rooms with warmth. I'd show her a new joint, a particularly beautiful cut of cherry wood, and she'd smile, her fingers tracing the smooth lines. In those moments, hope bloomed, a belief that our different worlds could merge into something stronger, richer. But the smiles grew thinner, the appreciation more performative. As years passed, the gap between my world of chisels and her world of designer bags widened into a chasm. I saw the envy in her eyes when her friends talked about their lavish vacations, their new cars, their husbands' booming careers. My modest income, a steady but never spectacular flow, became a source of palpable tension. She'd walk into my workshop, the scent of fresh cedar momentarily masking her perfume, and her gaze would sweep over my carefully organized tools, the half-finished projects, as if searching for something that wasn't there, a hidden vault, perhaps a secret portal to wealth. I remember one evening, she sat across from me at a dining table I had spent months perfecting, an intricate inlay design swirling across its surface. She picked at her food, barely touching it. "Jason," she started, her voice tight, "this is beautiful, truly. But don't you ever think bigger? Don't you want more?" I told her I had more than enough. I had my craft, my passion. She just shook her head, a sigh escaping her lips. More than enough for you, maybe. But what about us? What about a future where we don't have to worry about every little expense? It was a quiet accusation, a slow, insistent drip of doubt into the well of my contentment. The hope I'd nurtured, the idea that she truly understood me, began to fray at the edges, revealing the raw, exposed nerves beneath. I tried to explain that my art wasn't about mass production, that its value lay in its uniqueness, its story. She just stared, her face a mask of polite incomprehension, and I knew, deep down, that we were speaking different languages. The air in our home grew heavy with unspoken expectations, with the weight of things left unsaid, and those said with a pointed edge. Monica's visits to my workshop became less frequent, and when she did come, her comments were laced with a dismissive air. "It's so quaint, Jason," she'd say, waving a hand vaguely at a workbench laden with tools. All this meticulous work for one single table. Don't you ever get tired of being so impractical? Impractical. That word felt like a dull saw blade grating against my very essence. My passion, the thing that gave my life meaning, was being reduced to a charming but ultimately useless hobby in her eyes. It stung, a slow, festering wound. I tried to bridge the gap. I suggested making smaller, more marketable items, things that could sell quicker, bring in more consistent income. I even experimented with simpler designs, pieces that required less time, less soul. But each time, the wood felt dead in my hands. The joy, the meditative focus, it evaporated. It felt like I was betraying a silent vow I'd made to the grain itself. I'd show Monica a prototype, something I thought might appease her, and she'd look at it with a critical eye, then say, "It's fine, I guess. But it's not exactly bringing in the big bucks, is it? It's not a lifestyle, Jason. It's a living." Asterisk, the distinction she drew was stark, brutal. For her, my craft was merely a means to an end, and not a very efficient one at that. For me, it was the very fabric of my existence. The pressure mounted, a suffocating blanket. Our conversations devolved into arguments, or worse, strained silences. I tried to talk about a new technique I'd mastered, the beauty of a rare burl, and she'd interrupt with stories of friends buying new vacation homes, or the latest luxury car. It was clear I wasn't just failing to provide for her material desires. I was failing to understand her world, her definition of success. I remember one fight, etched into my memory like a deep gouge in a prized piece of wood. She stood in the living room, hands on her hips, her voice rising. Asterisk, we could have so much more, Jason. But you're content to just tinker in your dusty workshop, making things for a handful of eccentric collectors. Don't you see how ridiculous that is? We're almost 45, and we're still living like struggling artists. Asterisk, I try to defend myself, my voice quiet, almost pleading. Asterisk, but Monica, this is who I am. This is what I do. It's not just about money. It's about legacy, beauty. Asterisk, she scoffed, a bitter sound. Asterisk, legacy doesn't pay the bills, Jason. Beauty doesn't buy a new Mercedes. I need a man who understands real value, not just some romantic notion of it. Asterisk, the words hung in the air, sharp and cold, a declaration of war on my very soul. My doubt solidified into a gnawing certainty that we were irrevocably lost to each other. The hope I'd once clung to, that she would eventually see the richness in my world, finally shattered, leaving behind a profound sense of anxiety and an aching loneliness even when she was in the same room. I started spending more and more time in the workshop, not just for the craft, but for the escape, the silent company of wood that never judged, never demanded more than I could give. The day she left, the air itself seemed to crackle with an unnatural stillness. I was in the workshop, sanding a walnut panel, the rhythmic rasp of familiar comfort. She walked in, dressed immaculately, a small suitcase at her feet, and the scent of a new, expensive perfume I didn't recognize. Her voice was calm, almost detached, as if discussing the weather. Asterisk, I'm leaving, Jason. For good. Asterisk, my hands froze, the sandpaper still against the wood. I turned, my heart already a cold knot in my chest. She told me she had met someone, a tech investor, someone who understood ambition, someone who valued her desire for a certain kind of life. She looked me dead in the eye, her gaze devoid of warmth, and said, Asterisk, I need a man who understood real value. Your passion is quaint, Jason, but it's not a future. Asterisk, those words, quaint and not a future, echoed in the sudden silence of the workshop, then in the hollow chambers of my heart. It wasn't just a breakup. It was an indictment of my entire being, a dismissal of everything I held sacred. She was gone, and the house, once filled with her bright, demanding energy, became a mausoleum of broken dreams. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the creak of the old floorboards and the frantic pounding of my own despairing heart. I walked through the empty rooms, the furniture I had poured my life into suddenly feeling like mocking monuments to a love that was never truly shared. Each piece, a memory of a hopeful beginning, now felt like a painful reminder of her disdain. I remember collapsing onto a sofa I had crafted for her, its smooth leather cool against my cheek. The tears came then, hot and stinging, a torrent of grief for what was lost, for what had never truly been. The betrayal was a physical ache, a gaping wound that threatened to consume me. Every choice I had ever made, every hour spent in the pursuit of beauty, seemed to flash before me, now tainted by her judgment. Had I been foolish? Naive? Was my unwavering dedication to my craft truly a weakness, a flaw that made me unworthy of love, of a real future? The thought was a poison, seeping into every corner of my mind, telling me I was a failure, a man who had prioritized inanimate objects over the woman he loved. The tools in my workshop, once extensions of my soul, now felt heavy and meaningless. The wood, once a source of inspiration, seemed to mock my solitude. I was adrift, shipwrecked on an island of my own making, surrounded by the beautiful, silent things that had cost me everything. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of waking with a heavy heart, wandering aimlessly, and finding no solace anywhere. My despair was absolute, a crushing weight that held me captive, leaving me breathless and utterly alone. The workshop, once a place of vibrant creation, became a tomb of my aspirations. For weeks, I barely stepped inside, the sight of my tools too painful a reminder of a life that felt utterly derailed. But the silence of the empty house was worse, the echoes of Monica's parting words reverberating in every corner. One gray Portland afternoon, driven by a desperate need to escape the crushing emptiness, I found myself standing at the threshold of my shop. The familiar scent of wood dust, usually comforting, now felt like a ghost, a remnant of a life I'd lost. I picked up a piece of discarded oak, its grain rough and unforgiving, and without conscious thought, my hands began to move. It started tentatively, just planing, sanding, the mindless rhythm of balm to my frayed nerves. I wasn't trying to make anything specific, just trying to feel something other than despair. But as days bled into weeks, something shifted. The pain, instead of paralyzing me, began to transform into a strange, raw energy. I stopped trying to create what I thought others wanted, or what Monica had dismissed. Instead, I poured every ounce of my heartbreak, every flicker of anger, every whisper of loneliness into the wood. My hands, guided by a grief-fueled instinct, began to sculpt forms I had never attempted before. They were raw, visceral pieces, less furniture and more expressions of emotion. Twisted, yearning shapes, smooth, protective curves, jagged, broken edges. Each cut, each chisel stroke, felt like a release, a silent scream, a quiet lament. I developed a new technique, a way of laminating thin strips of different woods, then carving them into fluid, sculptural forms that seemed to defy the rigidity of the material. The pieces were unlike anything I'd ever seen, born from a crucible of pain and a relentless pursuit of beauty that was now purely for myself. They weren't practical, not in the way Monica defined it. They were art, pure and unadulterated. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, as I worked, a tiny spark of realization began to glow within the ashes of my despair. This was my true path. This was the real value I had always understood, the one she couldn't see. One day, an old collector who had always admired my traditional work visited my shop, expecting to see a new dining table. Instead, he saw the new, sculptural pieces, stark and powerful. He walked around them, his eyes wide with a quiet awe. "Jason," he whispered, his voice hushed, "these are magnificent. There's a story in every curve, every shadow. This is something else entirely." His words were a lifeline, pulling me from the depths. He insisted on taking a few pieces to a small, exclusive gallery downtown, a place known for showcasing avant-garde design. To my astonishment, they sold. Not quickly, not for a fortune, but they sold. And with each sale, a tiny bit of my fractured self began to knit back together. The solace I found in the workshop wasn't just an escape. It was a rebirth, a quiet, defiant reclaiming of my purpose. My art wasn't just a passion anymore. It was my therapy, my voice, my unwavering companion in the slow, arduous journey back to myself. The recognition, once a distant dream, began to snowball. That first local gallery led to others, then to design shows in Seattle and San Francisco. My unique, sculptural pieces, born from the crucible of my pain, resonated with people in a way my traditional furniture never had. Critics called my work emotionally charged, profoundly evocative, a masterclass in wood as a medium for the soul. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very impractical nature of my new art, the lack of immediate commercial appeal that Monica had so derided, was precisely what made it so valuable, so sought after. The commissions started rolling in, not just from collectors, but from high-end interior designers, architects, even international art foundations. My modest workshop in Portland became a destination, my name synonymous with a specific kind of raw, sculptural elegance. My financial situation, once a point of contention and shame, transformed dramatically. I bought the larger, more modern workshop I'd always dreamed of, a place with soaring ceilings and abundant light, but I kept the old one too, a quiet space for reflection and experimental pieces. I hired apprentices, young artists eager to learn the craft, but more importantly, to understand the philosophy behind it. My life, once defined by a broken relationship and a dismissed passion, was now a vibrant tapestry of creativity, purpose, and genuine connection. I traveled, exhibited, met fascinating people who spoke my language, who saw the soul in my work without needing to be told. Then, a whisper of the past found its way back to me. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard about Monica, the wealthy tech investor she had left me for. He had, predictably, left her for a younger woman. Her carefully constructed world of material wealth had crumbled, leaving her struggling financially, trying to maintain a facade with rapidly dwindling resources. I felt a pang, not of malice, but of a detached kind of pity. The universe, it seemed, had a way of balancing the scales. Not long after, an article featuring my work appeared in a national design magazine, a sprawling spread with stunning photographs of my latest collection. It was a pivotal moment, cementing my international acclaim. The day the magazine hit stands, my phone began to ring. It was Monica. Her voice, once sharp and critical, was now honeyed, dripping with admiration. Jason, darling, I saw the article. It's absolutely breathtaking. Your genius. It was always there, wasn't it? I see it now. I can truly appreciate it. She spoke of my vision, my unparalleled talent. Her words a thinly veiled attempt to re-enter my orbit. She hinted at reconciliation, subtly suggesting that she had grown, that she finally understood. Her calls became more frequent, her messages increasingly effusive, always circling back to how much she now understood my art, how much she regretted her past blindness. It was a strange sensation, hearing her praise, knowing the source. It wasn't vindication I felt, not entirely. It was a cold, hard certainty that her appreciation was still, as it always had been, entirely superficial. My liberation wasn't just from her physical presence, but from her judgment, from the shadow of her shallow desires. My heart, once shattered, now felt surprisingly resilient, built anew from the very pieces she had tried to break. The private viewing for my latest collection was held at a prestigious gallery in the Pearl District, the kind of place Monica had always craved to be seen in. The room buzzed with the murmur of sophisticated voices, the clinking of champagne glasses, the soft glow of spotlights on my work. Each piece, a testament to my journey, stood proudly. Intricate, flowing sculptures that spoke of resilience and transformation. I moved through the crowd, engaging with collectors, designers, and critics, a quiet sense of accomplishment settling deep within me. I was home, truly home, in this space where my art was understood and celebrated. Then, a familiar scent, an expensive perfume, wafted through the air, and a shadow fell over me. I turned, and there she was, Monica, looking just as impeccably styled as I remembered, though perhaps a little harder around the eyes. She moved towards me with a practiced grace, her gaze sweeping over my work with an almost theatrical reverence, as if trying to absorb its value through osmosis. She finally stopped before me, a small, carefully rehearsed smile on her lips. Jason, she began, her voice soft, almost a whisper, as if sharing a secret. I see now what I missed. Your soul is in these pieces. Every curve, every line, it's breathtaking. We were meant to create a life of beauty together, weren't we? Her eyes, once sharp and critical, now held a manufactured regret, a practiced vulnerability. She reached out, a hesitant gesture towards my arm, her touch tentative, designed to evoke a ghost of intimacy. She tried to hold my gaze, searching for something, a flicker of the old Jason, the one who would have been moved by her words. I stood there, a glass of champagne cool in my hand, feeling an almost detached calm. Her performance, once so convincing, now felt transparent, a thin veil over a calculated agenda. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the woman I had loved, but a reflection of the past, a ghost I had long since laid to rest. My heart, once a battleground, was now a fortress. Monica, I replied, my voice steady, devoid of anger or bitterness. You never saw the soul in my work. You saw the price tag attached to someone else's. My soul isn't for sale, and it certainly isn't for rent to a fair-weather admirer. My words hung in the air, a quiet, definitive period at the end of a long, painful chapter. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled. The practiced smile faltered, her eyes widened, and the carefully maintained composure slipped, revealing a flash of genuine shock, then a flicker of desperate anger. She opened her mouth, perhaps to argue, to plead, but no words came. She finally understood. The door was not just closed, it was sealed. I didn't wait for her response. I turned away, deliberately, cleanly. A genuine collector, a kind woman who had purchased several of my earlier, more traditional pieces, was standing nearby, admiring a new kinetic sculpture. I walked over to her, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. "Eleanor," I said, my voice warm, "I was just about to tell you about the nuanced tension in this piece. It represents the delicate balance between control and release, a concept I've been exploring." As I spoke, discussing the subtleties of my art, I felt Monica's presence recede, her carefully orchestrated attempt to reclaim a profitable relationship utterly rejected, leaving her to fade into the background noise of the gallery. A profound sense of peace settled over me, a quiet, unshakable serenity. The pain, the despair, the long journey through the darkness, it had all led me here, to this moment of absolute clarity. My art, once dismissed as quaint and impractical, now spoke for itself, loud and clear, celebrated and understood. And my heart, once broken and vulnerable to her superficiality, was now whole, healed, and untouchable. The bitterness was gone, replaced by a quiet gratitude for the journey, for the art that had saved me, and for the strength I had found in the solitude of my own making. The future stretched before me, not without its challenges, but filled with the promise of genuine connection, authentic creation, and a deep, abiding sense of purpose that no one could ever take away.